Hello and welcome to Football Manager 2023 Roleplay, a project where we create a player using the FM pregame editor, give him a potential ability of 200, and see if he will become the greatest American footballer ever. Unlike many videos on YouTube, we will not be managing a club, and we will simply watch the progression of this player, Henry Marshall, from the age of 15 to hopefully his eventual retirement. This is a world building exercise where FM23 provides the events and we build a story around those events. And here is our current information about the now 18-year-old Henry Marshall, who joined Liverpool at the beginning of 2025 and has bounced around between the under 18 and under 21 squads. Now, his current rating has risen from 126 to 127, but he'll have to do well at the junior level to avoid being loaned out, since the club has already placed him on loan. As Liverpool leads the Premier League, his chances of joining the senior club are dim. Will Henry stay at the junior club level, or will he go out on loan? And a big question is, if he goes out on loan, can we follow him? Let's take a look at the league setup screen right here. You can see these are all the leagues that we can are playable leagues. So these are the leagues we can follow with a great level of detail. Now there is a setting called view only, but I've read online somewhere that the view only setting distorts the statistics. So I don't want to add a league here unless it's a playable league. My plan is going to be to add a couple more leagues before May the 1st, so we can try to cover as many of our bases as we can in case of a loan. And the two leagues I'm going to probably add are Portugal and the Netherlands. And I'll probably only add the top level of those leagues. And if Henry, gets loaned somewhere else, or if he stays with Liverpool, I'll drop them later. I don't want to burn too much of the game's processing speed. It's already like 4.5. I want to keep things quick. I don't want it to dim too greatly. Now, if he gets sent to, say, Belgium, and I've not covered Belgium, or sent to Scotland, then the updates might be very truncated because we really won't be able to know any specific in-game circumstances of what's going on in Henry's life. So what we're going to try to do now is we're going to try to get back into the game, and we're going to follow him on the under 18 and under 21 schedules. The under 18 season will end on the 12th of April. So we'll see what happens, try to make it to the end of the season, and go from there. Okay, as you can see, we have moved up to March 27th. Let's try to follow things in a little bit more detail. We're going to go to the FA Youth Cup quarterfinals, and this is an under 18 game that Henry participated in. We got to get away from these guys in here. This game was on against the Southampton under 18 squad, and the result is a 4-1 extra time victory. It has to be a rare a 4-1 extra time victory. The two teams are tied at 1-1, then 3 goals in the extra period for Liverpool, just buried Southampton. Henry ran 10 miles out there in that game, and he had the worst. He played the entire game, even extra time. Had one of the worst games of his life. It was like a 5.9 match rating. The Liverpool under 18s will now move to the semifinal version of their FA Cup. And here we can see Henry Marshall's stat line right here. His aerials basically weren't completed. Not a great day for him. After this game, Marshall was called in for a chat with Mark Bridge Wilkinson. Now, Mark Bridge Wilkinson is the manager of the under 18 squad. And he told him, he said, Henry, when I watch you move up and down the pitch, I can practically hear your teeth grinding in frustration. No one expects you to be perfect at this level. You're only 18 years old, so settle down. Not everybody is ready for playing in the toughest league in the world at age 18. Your job is to control the parts of the game you can control, and no one expects any more than that from you. The club invested money in you, and your coaches are taking care of that investment. You do your part, and you stop worrying about things you can't control. All right? Anyway it goes, you've got about a week off. Rest. But there were other matters outside of football that he had to worry about. He knew there was a deadline of April 30th to find a place to live. And since he didn't know if he was going to be making the club or not, and he didn't want to pay the mortgage, he could be loaned out, for example, and he didn't want to pay the mortgage of a place he wouldn't be living in, and he didn't want to be a landlord. So it was going to be corporate housing again. Therefore, on March 10th, Henry moved out of his host family residence and into a bungalow in Formby, which was not far away from the training center. It was expensive to him anyway. It was an Airbnb property at about $3,300 a month. He would have this for 90 days, maximum rental time, and then he'd either have to have gotten his own place by then, or shift around like a hobo with a suitcase. But it solved one of his problems, at least temporarily. Now, Henry and his teammates decided to spend their time off, and his next game wouldn't be until March 15th by going clubbing in Liverpool. Now, Henry had been around alcohol enough and had been around wild football players enough to make up his own rules. He always ate a big meal before he knew he was going out, and he made sure that he worked through his pints at a rate of about an hour a pint. His other teammates teased him for being a slow drinker, but when he was willing to buy around for his mates, they didn't turn down the offer. He'd have water or soda in between, and he wouldn't drink any shots and if he did drink a shot, he would make sure it was watered down sufficiently. The club would hit about two or three places that night. He was surprised at how many times his teammates would go for the throat on a pickup. So I'm a football for Liverpool. Henry thought there would be some major players in the senior team out at some of these clubs, but he didn't see anybody there. Some of the players on the under 18 team were showing off the Wikipedia articles. Here's one right here. Henry could have showed this one off. And a couple of girls, the clubs, they liked the attention Henry was giving them, but at the end, he wasn't getting any interest at all. He walked away empty-handed. Maybe you should have been put that out front. Hey, I'm with Liverpool. Maybe you just look too young, or maybe his Wikipedia article wasn't impressive enough. Who knows? Well, as you'll see on March 15th, when we go back and look at the rosters again, Henry was taken off of loan. He was no longer being offered as a loan. Henry saw that as good news. At about this time, the United States national team told him he would probably be selected in a home game against Ukraine on March the 26th. And that next day, March 15th, he would play a game against the under 18 Manchester United squad, a home game that ended in a 1-1 draw. He actually attempted three shots at goal in that game, but unfortunately, only one of the shots actually went near the net. And as a result, he ended up with a 6-6 rating. 2 days later, March 17th, they put him in an under 21 squad match. This is against West Brom here. And that was also ending in a 1-1 tie. At least he's playing these matches fully, but his match rating is just crap. It's a 6-5. All this jumbling between teams. It ended in a 1-1 draw. He got kicked in the shin, and he was actually out of that game, as you can see here in the 18th minute with a minor injury. So at least he got to rest a little bit, but at the price of pain. It wasn't a permanent injury, but he sure felt like it. So he didn't get much rest. On March the 19th, now Henry's selection to the game against Ukraine was confirmed by the U.S. national team. That same day, Liverpool's under 18 squad would take on Watford's under 18 squad in the Premier League Cup final. As you can see, Liverpool won that game 3-2. There's Henry Marshall right there. They won it 3-2. Midfielder Russell Thompson was named player of the match. We'll see this here, right there. This was their third consecutive Premier League under 18 cup. 3 cups in a row. Marshall finishes the game, as we see, a 6.9 match rating, and this is his first trophy at the professional level of any kind. So he was glad to get it. Now, from March 23rd, Henry found himself on relatively restful international duty. He went off to play for the United States on the 26th against Ukraine at Shell Energy Stadium in Houston. Excuse me. There we are. Make sure we're right here. Shell Energy Stadium in Houston. His mother and father were actually in attendance that game. They drove about the 4 hours between Shreveport and Houston. As we'll show you here, Henry was actually horrible in that game. He won 2-1, but he had a match rating of 6-1. But he got his 4th cap, and he was allowed to play the entire game. So, bad choice, worst person on the field, but got a chance to play, got a chance to pick up a cap. So, hopefully, something good will come of that. And here we are back at the April the 18th, 2025. At least during this time, we see that Henry Eric Marshall's overall reputation has gone up from a 1.5 star player to a 2-star player. Let's talk about what happened since we last left. We'll look at some of these games here at the under 18 level. He played a game on March 29th. This game, Man City under 18s, that was a 1-0 victory. A jet-lagged Henry Marshall coming back from the Olympics, for the U.S. national team. He finishes with a 6-6. He takes 1 shot on goal. Excuse me, I'm not really fumble-fingered right now. Takes a 1 shot at goal. Liverpool pretty much has possession this entire game. This game secures the championship for Liverpool for the Premier League under 18 South. Now, at that point, Henry had no more under 18 games until April the 12th, and he returned back to the under 21 squad and practiced with them. Now, he did get some news around March 31st. Let me show you the news he got March 31st. Short list. Don't worry, we will find it. We'll talk about all these things here. There it is. Net 50 best wonder kids in football. And Henry Marshall comes out in this list, but he comes out at number 27. He has now fallen 8 places because the last time he was on that list, I believe he was at number 19. The Henry is very unhappy about this. And he's starting to feel that his time in the Liverpool youth system isn't helping him develop. But he goes off to play that under 21 game against Aston Villa. And in this game against Aston Villa, where are they? That's the senior team right there. Yep, that was a 1-1 tie at home. And Henry was sort of a little bit mad. Maybe he got a little fired up. He had a 6-9 showing in that game. Maybe a little bit mad about that Nets Gym 50 issue. And, maybe if his passing had been a little bit sharper in that game, he may have ended up with a green match rating. Could have ended up with 7.0, got a 6.9. After this game, Henry had about 2 weeks off. And a few days later, he went out clubbing again with his mates. Near the end of the night, he struck up a chat outside of a club with a girl with green hair and facial jewelry. She liked his hair, and he liked her hair. And because it was, green, it was very eye-catching. And when he opened his mouth, he said, she said, "You're a Yank, but you look like you've been around. Are you a student?" And he said, "No." He said, "I'm with Liverpool Youth Academy. Not a superstar, not yet." And she said that the clubs were boring and she was going to go home. He said, "I'll walk you home." And she said, "That's fine." So they hooked up that night in her apartment. Her name was Lucy Bennett. But she said, like, it's like from the Vampire Diaries, because apparently there was a character called Lucy Bennett in that show. And she was 20 years old. Henry had never heard of that show. Lucy had finished secondary school, and she'd been working in a record shop in Liverpool for about 5 months. He took an Uber back to Formby. It was a great night for him. Before he went home, they exchanged numbers. And he'd tell her the story of his meeting that psycho at the Olympics much later on. Aside from that, there really wasn't much to do in Formby now that he was away from Liverpool. He learned that Formby was a commuter town. It had a mix of older locals and rich people that commuted to Liverpool. He knew that Jurgen Klopp lived there, but he never bumped into the man, never bumped into any other players there. The beach areas of Formby brought a lot of tourists, but the city center of Formby was pretty quiet. There were pubs, but he didn't visit any of them. It felt like living in Sandy Springs back in Atlanta. He went back to playing first person shooters and FIFA Online with all of his academy friends. Now, he did, out of sheer boredom, took a visit north to Crosby and found a bakery in Crosby that was, quite nice. Yep, he went around. Everything smelled good. Then he saw these cupcakes. Okay. He smiled. He told the nice ladies behind the counter that he was an American tourist. He got his order, and then he got out. In his mind, never to return. Well, eventually got to April 12th, and Henry was surprised that he wasn't chosen for this game. How to do the hokey pokey again. Under 18. He was not chosen for this game against Middlesbrough, this away game on the 12th. He was unselected for that. Undoubtedly, he was being saved for the U21 Premier League International Semi-Cup Final on April 13th. Now, what is this, Premier League International Semi-Cup Final? Apparently, it is a competition that involves under 21 Premier League clubs against other European under 21 clubs. The semi-final took place at Man City. Liverpool loses a match it should have won. Loses that match 1-0. Now, Adam Steele had a good game. Henry Marshall had a good game. But nobody else, really had, a good game at all. I had four key passes in that game. He was pretty sharp. Henry was pretty sharp in that one. He was glad to turn in a good performance compared to his peers. 2 days later, he plays for the under 18s again. Semi-final game in the FA Youth Cup against Sheffield United. That was a 2-1 win. So it's been 2 days later. He's a little bit knackered. He only has a 6.5 match rating in that game. He thought he played kind of crap. He left the game in the 57th minute due to an injury. He just felt really tight and really unhealthy in that game. But Liverpool under 18s won 2-1. They'll face either Aston Villa or Barnley in the FA Youth under 18 final. He did get some good news about one of his old coaches. That was, you remember Wilfried Nancy and all the problems he had with Atlanta? Well, after being dumped in Atlanta United, Wilfried Nancy had found a new job with Houston in the MLS. Let's see if we can find that information here. We're at the bottom. We need to be closer to the top. And Houston. Nancy wants Houston role, and he would eventually get this role. Takes charge at Houston. He'd been out of work for about 6 months or so. Houston Dynamo were in 13th position in the Western Conference. They clearly needed some help. Henry sent Wilfried a text wishing him the best. Henry hoped the club politics at Houston were less toxic than they seem to be in Atlanta. We can see here that the main club, Liverpool, has won the U.S. Champions League quarterfinal. They won that against Chelsea 3-0 on aggregate. I believe the semifinal will have Liverpool against Napoli and PSG against FC Bayern. Liverpool hoping to take home a European title. Liverpool is also, by the way, after 33 games, they are 8 points ahead of Man City. There's going to be a future game here on the 19th, one day away against Man City. If they take that one, Man City might not even be able to catch them here. So it could be lots of trophies here for Liverpool this year. And that's the end of this episode. So we're going to try to get to the end of Henry's first half season with Liverpool. Lots could happen in the offseason. He could be loaned. He could be traded. And then there's the U.S. national team. There's a FIFA Under-20 World Cup that's coming up. And I also believe the Copa America is happening this year. So what will happen to Henry? Anyway, if you like what you hear or see, make a comment or hit the like and subscribe button. Until next time.